of Exit Liquidity live again this time. This is episode 72, live episode number 3. Today we're here with researcher, trader, certified dog, KEL. KEL, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being on. This is gonna be a fun one. I feel like we have a lot of interesting things to talk about.
A lot of exit liquidity to source.
A lot of for sure. Gonna be a lot of alpha coming in or out of this one for sure. So to start out, I just want to know, like, who are you, man? Like, I feel like a lot of people have seen you kind of blow up on Twitter recently. A lot of interesting ideas, a lot of clout for sure, but not a lot of people like really know the story behind KEL. So I want to get a little bit into that.
Yeah, man, it sounds good. So yeah, I'm KEL. I go by KEL XYZ on Twitter. I got my start in the game at Messari. So I was a research analyst there first, and we've had like several different iterations of the analyst program. I know they're doing another one right now. But yeah, so I was in that 2021 and then went from that to full-time, was there for 3 years, and now I'm just a on-chain degen, I suppose. So yeah.
Yes, sir. That's the life right now. Yeah. Honestly, having the time to just focus fully on markets is especially going from like a research background and like doing it in a very structured way, and then you get to go and just like apply that, however, to your trading.
Yeah. Which kinds of research, like where did you focus mainly, or what did you like the most?
So I did a lot of different things. I kind of resisted the trend to like specialize and like focus on one niche. I started with gaming, didn't really like that too much, and then ended up in a somewhat lucky fashion pivoting to Solana basically one day after the FTX collapse. So I can get into that story if you guys want, but I went to Breakpoint and I was honestly kind of bearish on Solana even when I went to Breakpoint. But then I quickly discovered that the vibes were actually way higher than people were kind of putting on. And then, while it was tough for most people, the FTX collapse and everything, for me, it was a huge opportunity because, the price and the sentiment had basically collapsed as I was getting like max bullish. So
what were the conversations like at Breakpoint? I know like a lot of people kind of resonate with that event as like you said, like the vibe shift, and you just became super bullish. You're on the timeline like, why the fuck is everyone bearish? Like, this was such a great time.
Yeah.
What were the conversations like? Any projects in specific you had a good combo with? Any founders?
I think the big mental shift for me was actually the first Fire Dancer demo so Kevin Bowers had presented on Fire Dancer for the first time. If people don't know, Fire Dancer is like a new like validator client for Solana. It's still being like produced or developed, but at that time 2022 is when they had first like shown the world, hey, we're working on, if it works, it's going to be 1 million TPS. And I was sat in the crowd like I didn't understand a single word of the technical stuff that he was talking about, but once he said 1 mil TPS, I was like, all right, that sounds kind of legit. Let me like look into this more. Obviously I was in a different country, so I couldn't really be like buying and stuff like that at the time, and that ended up being like, of course, a source of luck because, Solana went down 80% in one candle while everyone was flying back to the States. You know what I mean?
Damn.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Before we jump into like the whole conversation, we have the podcast is called Exit Liquidity. I feel like the fun parts about, doing crypto full time is like everyone's trading on the side, even if they have like a full-time job, like developers are trading, everyone's trading. Can you go into your story of how you got into crypto, but kind of centered around maybe some moments that you might have been exit liquidity?
Okay. So there was one big moment where I could have really got bad, and Cuban actually lost like 8 mil off this, which was the Titan stable coin. It was on Polygon, right? And so it was algo stable on Polygon, kind of Luna, it basically speed ran the Luna price action before Luna was even a thing. This all must have gone down in like a 2-week span. And so at that point, I was doing an internship. That was 2020 summer. So COVID, everyone's at home, learning how to gamble, if you will. and I was doing like a remote work internship and just throwing in my like every 2-week paycheck or whatever. It's like I'm at home. I ain't got nothing to spend no money on. And I remember back then you could go on Beefy Finance. I don't know if y'all remember that. It's like the yield, like it would auto compound your yield.
Yeah.
So naturally you go on there and you sort by like APY, the highest APY, right? And so that's how I found Titan. And I didn't really know what I was doing. So I literally just bought it and it doubled in like a day from maybe 4 to 8. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna be out of this because I like, you know.
Yeah.
But then it goes all the way up to like 80. And the whole time I'm there, like,
Sick.
man, bro, I am sick. And I swear I was about to buy this shit. And I see Marc Cuban posting about it. I'm like, this is about to be the future, bro. Like, because this is before I got the mindset of like, when you see someone like Marc Cuban posting, that's when you got to run for the exit. In my mind, I was like, oh, like this is about to be the next die or some shit, you know? So I'm like getting ready to buy. And then by the time I see on the timeline, people are posting like the Marc, you know, the meme where dude's on a bike and then he puts a stick and he falls. And it's like Marc Cuban, it like aping into 100,000% APY stable, and then it rugs, and then Marc Cuban like asking for regulation. This shit was mad funny, mad funny. That was the first story that came to my mind, like early on, real degen type experience.
Yeah. Was it like even before that? Was it like Bitcoin white paper, ETH? What was it that was kind of like the first thing you came across?
Yeah, so I had actually read this book. It was called The Blockchain Revolution. Almost everything in this book was wrong, by the way. But it came out like 2016, and I bought it by chance. I just happened to be in a bookstore, and I just seen the cover from a distance. I was like, that cover looked kind of cool. Literally on some judge a book by the cover type shit. And I walked up, I was like, blockchain revolution, what the fuck are these motherfuckers talking about? And so I just bought it right then and there. And they talked about like, you know, the Bitcoin white paper and like all these companies at that time that were trying to build stuff on top of Bitcoin, because this was 2016. This is before, like the book came out in 2016. I read it 2019. So everything in the book was talking about people building stuff on Bitcoin. And, you know, of course, none of that really panned out because turns out it's damn near impossible to build anything on Bitcoin. But that's what kind of piqued my interest. And then, you know, buying Bitcoin, buying ETH. And then my first like dopamine trade was buying Link. And I didn't even buy like on crazy size or from 10 cents or nothing like that. I bought it when it was like $3 and it went to 20, something like that. And I was like, damn, I must be a genius. So, you know, after that, it was just, you know, keep it going.
For sure. Yeah. That's definitely like a poignant moment for a lot of people. I feel like something like kind of explodes after you buy it and you're like, I must be doing something right.
Yeah.
And then like you quickly find out like, no, the fuck you're not.
The opposite.
You get humbled real quick.
Yeah.
And then you have to build yourself back up. But that's the journey. That's like the best part of it.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't heard you talk about this in a while, but where do you stand on like ETH and the EVM these days? Because I know like big Solana proponent, obviously you got a Solana shirt on.
Yeah.
You know, you were one of the few people like who was speaking out in support of it with like very good, like very sound, like fundamental backing as well. And these days, like personally, I think like the ETH thesis is like, you know, weaker than it's ever been, at least like publicly, like from the information that is like commonly known. Where do you kind of stand on the EVM?
I'm in a similar position. I think that there are a few different efforts to kind of revitalize the EVM, but those are distinct from ETH. So you look at Monad, of course, people have spoken a lot about Monad and there's a lot of excitement there. And it could be really legit tech. It could be, you know, the fabled, like it's Solana plus Ethereum, you know, combined or whatever, you know, the final form, all this other stuff. Like it could be that, who knows? But what does that really do for ETH, the asset?
Yeah.
I don't think it does anything for ETH just because people are using the EVM. And so when I look at Ethereum specifically, I don't really see any structural advantages that ETH has over really any other competing network, primarily Solana. You know, the dominant narrative for Ethereum are restaking. Okay, any other network can do that. And the economic security that you have is a function of market cap. So if I pump Harmony 1, let's say, just to take Solana out of it, let's say I pump Harmony to 500 bill market cap, then it has the same security, whatever that ETH has, you know, so that's not unique. Of course, ETF is not unique. Roll-ups are not unique. You know, you could argue that Celestia is already better than Ethereum for hosting roll-ups. There's no reason why you can't have roll-ups on Solana. So you go down the line, I just don't really see any like super structural argument for the Ethereum network to outperform either price-wise or even just adoption-wise versus some of these other networks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll leave probably over a way longer time frame, but I've been an ETH boy for like a pretty long time. Came up in DeFi, you know, like faded Solana with this dude sitting right across from me begging me to buy it, just like fudding myself.
Many such cases, man. Many such cases.
Fudding myself out of anything successful. And the thing for me was, well, I bought into a lot of bullshit from the ETH side, but me and Ali have had this conversation recently, and he's kind of brought it up a lot more of like the idea of like, you know, without restaking, what would ETH be without like this whole eigenlayer thing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is my pushback a little bit is like the validator set and like the security that brings. I'm still kind of like stuck in that. And then there's some people that say that the L2s kind of the interactions that they have with ETH and the L1 kind of accrue value to it, almost like a basket of ETH stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, was there a moment where you kind of came up as ETH DeFi and kind of had this shift to Solana?
Totally. I was an ETH maxi. Like I said, you know, I went to like my story I gave was trading on Polygon.
Yeah.
I went to Solana Breakpoint 2022, bearish Solana.
Why'd you go?
Because it was in Lisbon, bro. What do you mean by I went? You know, it's an excuse to go to Lisbon, dog. Like,
yeah.
It's not my favorite city, by the way.
But I think there's something powerful, and I mean, you can throw out like ETH, but the ability to kind of have that conviction and kind of like, you know, just the idea of exit liquidity. You're left holding bags a bunch of the time. Sometimes you got to let those fucking bags go, whether it's ETH or whatever kind of asset. If you find that new conviction, you find that kind of new thesis, letting the old shit go and really having confidence to run in that. Like, what was that like for you? Was it just natural? Was it?
Oh, absolutely not. It's super difficult because even as like, you know, I had this growing conviction and I was writing research on Solana, there's a difference between knowing something mentally and then actually changing, like, you know, especially with finance and especially in crypto when it's such a tie between like your social circles and your beliefs and your bags that it's hard to like mess up the feng shui that's there, even when you think it's the right thing to do. And so for me, like, you know, I was getting bullish on Solana at the lows, but was I max bidding my portfolio at the lows? Like, no, you know, I might have even bid like 2% because to let go of my ETH bags was just, and still is to a certain degree, like an unthinkable thing for a lot of people. It's taken as granted that you should have like a majority ETH position outside of people who are deep Solana, you know, or like came up on Solana. Most people, if you came up 2020 or 2017 even, to let go of your ETH bag is like, you know, that's like if there's a crypto Bible, it'd be like, you know, 10 commandments is like, thou shalt not sell ETH, right? But when I realized that, it actually became a source of edge because, you know, and every time I say this quote, I want to like steal it, but it's not me. It is a Suzu quote. I know that's kind of like a suspect person to bring up, but it's a great quote, so I'm gonna roll with it.
Yeah.
And he said that, you know, the moment you realize you're wrong is the moment of greatest opportunity. Because if you're wrong and you have a consensus view, that means that everyone else is also wrong. And if you can act upon that and close that gap and, you know, be right, then you can front run everyone else going through the same thing. What have we seen over the last year and a half? Number after number after number of people who were all about ETH in the last cycle. You even have people like Santiago Santos or Santiago Roel coming out. This dude has a punk Avi and he's saying like 80% probability that Solana flips ETH, right?
Yeah.
So in the time it went from everyone saying that Solana is going to literal zero to now Solana 120, 140, whatever the case may be, it's a number of people closing that gap, and that's reflected in the price, right? So for me, I was lucky that I was able to realize I was wrong, in part because I went to Breakpoint, and that had debunked a lot of the FUD against Solana in my mind. And then because I realized that so early, even though I didn't do the right thing, which is sell my ETH and buy Solana, it allowed me time to continue to do that successfully, like repeatedly, you know? So I'm reducing my allocation from 95% ETH, 5% SOL in November 2022 to 80-20, 70-30. And by the time June comes around, that's when I wrote the second like big Solana report. I was basically all in. So
Yeah.
Damn.
Good time for sure to like kind of make that transition fully. I mean, it took
Yeah.
time obviously, but the thing is like the people always like to say things like the next Cedo or the next Jupiter, the next, you know, insert like Solana miracle comeback story here. But like there, like you can't recreate that like information asymmetry that was just in like plain sight. People were just like stuck in their views. There were like certain things that, you know, the crypto book of commandments that people believed, and you just it took I don't know, maybe like an hour, 2 hours worth of like earnest research to like start to question those a little bit. And that like opportunity existing again is like, you know, I'd like to think like you would be able to spot it next time around, or you'd like to think you'd be able to spot it next time around. But like when it's looking back, it was, you know, the opportunity was there for the taking, and still so many people faded it
to this day
too.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's still going on. How do you think about it on the flip side? Like of like, okay, you've realized this opportunity. You've made the trade. Not saying that this is, you know, the time for that obviously, but at what point does a trade start to feel too crowded for you? Or do you start to feel like something is almost becoming too mainstream?
When Marc Cuban tweets about
Yeah, he did tweet about Solana at the highs, by the way. He did.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He did. Shout out Marc Cuban, though. I know he's a fan of the pod.
He's a fan of the pod. He'll be tuning in.
And if he's not, he will be. No, I think like to an extent, you could already say that's the case for Solana.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that like the profitability of the trade like is gone. You know, I think it's reasonable that people expect, you know, expansion at least of all-time highs. Obviously, I don't know. It could be all over already, but you know, like I think the coin goes higher, but the asymmetry is no longer there. Where like it's already up 20x from the lows, $8 to 150, so a little less 20x. You know, at that point, it's not going to go up 20x again, at least in the span of one cycle. Now, you have different people, like, you know, for example, Multicoin, like, they're probably not going to sell even if it goes to 1K this cycle, because to them, you know, they're only going to sell if their thesis plays out, which is, you know, maybe their thesis is Solana should flip ETH. Or if you really read into, like, what they write, their thesis could be Solana should flip Bitcoin. You know, like, I've seen these people say these kinds of things, you know, that, like, you know, or like whatever the winning network is, let's just not say Solana, but whatever the dominant network, you know, if you think of all of these as commodities, the most used commodity, maybe it should be the most valuable. Who knows? Like, we don't have an answer, but, you know, it's a difference between cycle traders and multi-decade investors, right? You know, a lot of people probably made a lot of money trading Amazon in 1999, but in retrospect, they could have just like fucked off to Bora Bora, held their Amazon positions, and probably be a lot richer today if they, you know, really had that conviction in the internet and e-commerce and all these kinds of things. So
yeah, that kind of time horizon is I think few and far in between in this space of people who actually like zoom out to that extent and like aren't constantly, obviously, like a lot of us would probably be a lot better off if we did, but like with just the way our brains work these days, you know, everything's fried. We just want to catch the next thing.
Yeah,
the
no
way
doubt.
it goes here, and then money just ends up in the hands of smarter people one way or another. I want to talk about your Memecoin thesis a little bit because
it's like going the whole opposite side of the spectrum. We're like, yeah, we'd all make a lot more money if we just bought good stuff in 20 years. But like, let's go into the deck screener trenches
for sure. Yeah, because it's amazing to me how you like, you had that whole arc of this like Solana. I mean, I don't even want to call it a call because that kind of downplays it, but of like recognizing this opportunity, like, fully like expressing it to the public in full detail over the span of months, realizing that trade and then proceeding to do it again with like an entirely different like thesis and an entirely like different vertical. Can you that Memecoin thesis that you wrote kind of did its rounds on Twitter? Can you just like distill it down for us real quick? Give us an elevator pitch.
Yeah, so I think to step even back from the Memecoin thing specifically, because, ultimately you want this kind of thinking to be repeatable. And who knows, like in the Memecoin trade could be done. There could be some other new thing, and there will be new things in the span of, even this cycles going forward, et cetera. I think that generally my approach in the market is that in the first half of a bull market is a research heavy half, trying to discover the Solana, or in the last cycles, Ethereum was in the same position. People, Arthur Hayes famously said, ETH is a double-digit shitcoin, and it went to $80. And the people who were like, oh, well, maybe this like smart contract thing is legit, they traded it from $80 to $4K, So you want to be doing the research heavy stuff in the bear market going into the bull market. The second half of the bull market around, previous all-time highs and stuff, the big returns are made with like a trader mindset, looking for new metagames, new things that come out. So 2021, NFTs, gaming, Olympus, Luna, you could go down the line of things that, they might have gone badly in the end, but, those are the opportunities to make asymmetric returns. And so now let's fast forward to today. With the Memecoin thread and the whole thesis, you had a situation in which these are all at super low valuations. And there's a proven history that like if meme coins come around that people like, there's almost an insatiable demand, right? Dogecoin has proven this. You have the richest man in the world going on one of the most famous TV shows in history in 2021 with Elon Musk, and he's going on to shield Dogecoin, that was the top, but it just proves the point that people, have an appetite for these things. And now they can trade them on chain because Solana had the speed and the low costs and all that kind of stuff. It just made it easy to say, okay, what's going to get more attention? These meme coins that people are running up 100x overnight, or enter a DeFi project that has, literally in some cases billions of dollars worth of unlocks and has documentation that even the developers don't understand. Yeah. Which one do you want to bet on? The 10 mil FDV stuff over here, or the, 5 billion FDV stuff that no one understands over here? And so that's what made that a clear bet.
Yeah. I think it's like a simple yet elegant thesis when you zoom out. It's also like a difficult one to realize, I think, for most people like me and Cedo especially, who like got into crypto because of DeFi. Like we want to believe that this stuff should be important, like understanding the importance of like, it sounds dumb saying it out loud now, right? Like understanding the importance of like tokenomics, or like having a sustainable like emission schedule that properly like rewards all of your stakeholders. Like
it's used to write about fucking governance, dude.
Yeah. But you can argue that the market actually does value those things. These things do come out at billion-dollar valuations, but everyone in the public market is looking for these big returns, right? And that's where, the big returns were there for, let's say I don't know, what's a big, insert L2 launch, alt layer. I just pull one out of my hat. The early investors, they do have the returns there. You go down the line, these all have gigantic returns, but it's for a very specific group of people that are not public market participants. you know. So ultimately, you know, DeFi is valuable, and the market, you know, values a lot of DeFi coins like super highly. But to get the public market returns off DeFi is a different question, right? And the time there has passed because, you know, in the DeFi that we all saw in 2020, that's Aave 5 mil market cap. You know, this is the number one DeFi project, and it was trading at 5 mil, you know? So of course you can make gigantic returns off that. And that's why the Memecoin setup was something kind of similar, where it's like, okay, what in the market can even grab people's attention and is at a low valuation on the public market in the first place? And like coming at it from that angle, DeFi fit that description 2020, the L1s fit that description 2021 on a relative basis. The meme coins fit that description in 2024, right? So it's like they're all different variations of the same kind of trade. You just need that initial setup of like, can this thing even go up, or is insert VC going to like, are they a price agnostic seller? Like when they're going to sell billions of dollars, no matter what the price is, that's how you end up with a Lido situation. Or a Lido price is flat, even though the market cap went from 80 million to 2.6 billion in 2 years, and the price stayed the same. You know what? You can't buy that, right? You can't buy that.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a different game. Like I used to always conflate like returns with value, or returns that I could access with value. And like it's, I don't want to say easy, but it's like feasible to go in and do the work and say this is something that is valuable, right? When it comes to DeFi, at least. It's not always like, it's oftentimes not feasible to go and do that and also realize that value because the playing field's just not level. But now, obviously, with like Solana being as like prominent as it is, and with this thesis being in full swing, it's like we have a level playing field, I think, which is
or even a skewed
more
playing
level,
field.
at least.
Like I'd say it's skewed like in our favor.
You think so?
So like the VCs, they don't know there's no valuation framework, I guess, other than relative. Go on the same stuff we do, go on CoinGecko and say, oh, if WIF goes to Shiba, you know, like that's all they got. They don't have any deal flow advantage because these all launch on pump.fund or whatever, and they launch publicly. So they don't have that. And yeah, you know, you might have a PhD from MIT in computer science and you wrote, you know, you could be Satoshi Nakamoto themselves and it still would yield no advantage. So there's no technical advantage.
Yeah.
So the VCs, that's where their strengths lies, in deal flow and in understanding technology and all these kinds of things. So what does that do for you to analyze dog with hat? It does nothing. It does nothing. Right. Whereas like retail people, we're used to degening and shitcoining and just like making crypto internet jokes and stuff like that. And so people who've been super online, like ourselves, like over the span of years on Twitter and in these random trenches and stuff, we just have a generally more like a higher innate feel for like, maybe this one has potential, maybe this one has potential, or we're more used to trading on Unibot or whatever the case may be. So we can snipe these coins, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually think a lot of the more professional investors are like at a disadvantage because of these things. LPs also limit them and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're kind of, you know, they're stuck in a way almost, or they have been at least. I mean, some are, it appears to be coming around, but like who really knows when you have like a mandate and a thesis and like, you know, the backing of some suits who like, you know, quite honestly probably know nothing about crypto, just want like decent risk adjusted returns. What else are you spending your time on these days? Like what are you finding most interesting in the markets?
Well, I was going to ask before we jump there, like you said, like these like VCs have a hard time even sending funds to these meme coins to begin with. But we saw recently, and I want to get your take on this because I feel like there is like a Solana base like beef, but like Ansem is like what is like bringing them together with both of his theses.
Yeah.
But there was like Degen chain, they did like a VC deal. There have been like some other meme coins that have seemed a little bit VC. Can you kind of explain the maybe beef between Solana and Base? Have you interacted on there at all? What do you think of that whole thesis?
I've traded on both chains. Like I trade where there's opportunity. So like that aspect, you know, I try and avoid the tribalistic kind of thinking. Generally, I think the beef comes from, you know, like people on Ethereum, they're like, oh, well, we don't need Solana. We have these L2s or even L3s that, you know, quote unquote, match the performance of Solana while retaining the security and all this kind of stuff of Ethereum. The retaining security part, sure, that's fine. The matching performance stuff is like objectively not true, at least today. You can just like look, you know.
Neither is the security part, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, but we don't have to, you know, I prefer not to speak. But like, yeah, so I think a lot of the beef comes from people in Solana feeling like you guys are just propagating like nonsense to try and argue that like your tech stack is better than ours. And then the ETH people respond with our tech stack is good enough and it's more economically viable. Like I think Token Terminal had some graphic that came out comparing Solana and Base.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
It was like
that was so dumb.
It was like, yeah, it was like Solana is like negative 800 mil or something like that. Like net income because of the validator,
yeah,
rewards
they were like treating
and stuff.
emissions as like expenses.
Exactly. It
made no sense.
Yeah. So a lot of ETH people are like get excited about that. And like I'm not gonna say that I don't see any like portion of what their thinking is like, but ultimately it's about comparing apples to apples and also just like comparing factual statements, right? Like Base performance being equivalent to Solana performance is just not a factual statement. You know, the Base TPS is one number, like maybe 40, and Solana TPS is like 800. Like those are just not the same number, right? So like in terms of which is better, you know, at least today, you know, I'd probably still say Solana, but I like both chains.
And what do you think about like these like VC rounds into what is an L3 degen meme coin? Have you messed around there? Do you feel like there's any opportunity in like the L3 world?
I think there's opportunity just because the market will re-rate something if it's a chain for no reason. Yeah. So like with degen, like it basically died, and I faded it though. I was like, this is stupid, and you have VCs buying into like a coin that has no meme and all this. But it, you know, the market clearly thought otherwise, right? And I mean, now you look and like the degen chain has way more activity than even like Optimism, Arbitrum, et cetera, et cetera. So there has to be some degree of validity. And I think there's probably even a degree of opportunity there because, you know, how many people have really bridged to degen chain to like go do stuff? Probably not many. So something worth watching, I would say.
Yeah. Lots of, I don't know. I feel like lots of chains just pop up with like new meme coin environments or like new quote unquote. There's nothing new about it besides that it's like on a new chain. And like to me, I never find that to be compelling until there is like some sort of a thesis that makes it worthwhile. The chain's significantly more performant, like Solana, or like the whole like Coinbase smart wallet thing for Base. Like that stuff makes sense and like serves as a catalyst, but like just, you know, just for the sake of the chain being called degen, like that never like sold it for me, to be honest. Yeah, no, what else are you into these days though? Like what else do you spend your time looking into? What else grinds your gears?
I've honestly been like almost all in attention wise on just meme coins alone.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
Because when I look at other markets, I think the only big thing I've really missed is this sort of like yield tokens trade. So you have Pendle, you have like AP Wine is another one, and like there's a few of them that have all went up only. But other than that, of course, there's like these AI, you know, AI
Meme
GPU
coins.
farms,
Meme
you know,
coins.
the AI meme coins have like 5 GPUs, they're valued at like 800 mil or whatever.
Yeah.
So like you have that as well. Other than that, at least public market wise, there hasn't really been anything that has anywhere close to the same risk return of answering the question like, can insert meme coin go to a $1 billion valuation? Like, yes or no? Trying to figure that out. Like the risk return on figuring that out, at least for myself, has been way higher than like doing anything else. I do think like gaming could kind of make some kind of comeback, because as a mid to late cycle phenomenon, you have crypto come back, attention increases, and people around the world, some people, yeah, they can just hammer their paycheck into crypto or whatever, and like they have consistent income. But a lot of people, they want to get into crypto by like using as little initial capital as possible, and that's how you get like an Axie Infinity kind of thing, where people are like, oh, I can breed these Axies and then they earn SLP and I can sell the SLP and stuff like that. So I am looking for like stuff that fits that description. I guess I'll show my bags since it's Exit Liquidity show. Yeah. But I have been looking at FriendPet on base. I think they're doing some crazy proportion of the total transactions.
It was
on base.
It was like 5% last time I checked, but it's like steadily been climbing. Which is like, for base, that's a lot. Like base is pretty active these days.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, their metrics are like already kind of crazy. It's just the game, like the game's just not that fun. Like I play it.
Yeah.
I just like don't. have a good time playing it.
I don't be playing these games.
You don't play it.
Bro, like it's like, am I gonna play FIFA or FriendPet, bro? I'm not gonna be playing these games. But like, I think the game just has to be decent enough for the Axie Infinity type of player to play the game. That like in terms of evaluating it from a like, does this have venture scale returns potential? Not like, is this going to entertain me? There's no way that some crypto game is going to be able to compete with social media, other games. All these things are all competing for attention. There's no way that some crypto game is going to be able to like compete with Netflix for attention. But if it has this financial aspect and this earning aspect, then it can actually get a lot of users, and then the market prices it to, at least in theory, it will price it to like gigantic numbers. That's what happened, at least in the past. So yeah, that's my gaming bet, if you will.
Yeah. I think like the more money the game makes you, the shittier it can look. I think, and the shittier that it can be. We can run through the narratives. You mentioned, funny enough, the building stuff on Bitcoin. That has been a recent trend. You have the ordinals, BRC20s, the rune shit now. I mean, like there's a million things happening there. Like Merlin Chain has like 2 billion. And
Bitcoin has got a lot of money, man.
There's a lot of fucking money there. What's your take there?
I think it's still like a very open field that's very unclear as to like what tech, if any, will actually be used in a material fashion. And I think that's like, so earlier I had said there's this researcher and trader like halves to the market. And then within different ecosystems, the timelines are like, they also have their own like intra-cycle cycles, so like the Bitcoin ecosystem, the ETH ecosystem, Solana ecosystem, etc. They have different parts where they're in a researcher mode, trader mode, etc. And I definitely think with respect to actual tech on Bitcoin, definitely like a researcher kind of mode right now, where you're trying to figure out like, okay, all these teams are saying they have Bitcoin L2s. Like, does that actually work? How are they achieving that? Or is it just like a side chain? All right, that's not that exciting. Is it something different? Okay, but like, these are researcher kind of questions. And then like on the trader side, you've obviously seen like the, puppets and node monkeys and all this kind of stuff like go up only. And I've been super bullish on puppets. I remain super bullish on puppets just because it reminds me so much of when I discovered punks. And I didn't buy them because I didn't understand like the game at that point. And like, this must have been February 2021. Funnily enough, to bring it back to Marc Cuban, he actually posted like a soliloquy about punks, but they were at like 10 ETH, bro. It actually hit. It actually hit. He was like the rookie card of NFTs.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, Marc, I remember seeing that and being like, okay, I even put it, whatever. But back then, like, I'm sure the people who found ETH, let's say you found ETH 2019, and you saw puppets run up that big, and you were sidelined, you would have thought that it was over. You see Mark Cuban posting soliloquies and shit.
Yeah.
But then they ran up like another 20x USD value or even more from that point. And so that's kind of what my thesis is for puppets now. I don't know if it'll hit or if this is the top, but that's how I'm thinking about the Bitcoin eco.
Yeah. Definitely an interesting ecosystem. We're coming up on time here. We got like 5 minutes left. Is there anything we missed that you want to mention? Actually, just to say, I really like the example you just gave of different phases of different ecosystems. I think that's one major thing. People are gonna take away a lot of shit from this, by the way. Like this is a really good episode. That idea that is like really, really interesting. Do you want to maybe like run through the ecosystems and describe what phase they're at? Like,
sure. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
So I mean, I want to hear the Solana one. We can start there.
I would even say it's like to a degree researcher kind of aspect where like we've seen this gigantic trade play out, meme coins, all this stuff, and like maybe that continues. But I would say that the asymmetric upside is finding new projects building on Solana that are actually doing interesting things and like trying to invest in those. So researcher. ETH, I would say it's kind of in a middle ground where like the next big technical thing is known with like, Eigenlayer comes out. So I guess I would also say researcher heavy, like finding AVSs that are interesting. I think a lot of they're like Ritual and Hyperspace, for example, are like two AI projects that seem to be actually legitimate that have basically zero mind share like on Twitter right now because there's no tokens that you can trade. But you could totally go and like set up nodes on these things and like play around with them now, and like that might yield you some kind of advantage in the future. So I would say heavy. Say is in a no man's land where like there's nothing you can really trade there, and maybe me saying that indicates like there might be something I'm missing type thing.
People were doing a lot of NFT trading on there not long ago.
Yeah,
like
I remember
a
that.
lot,
Yeah,
like a
like
surprising
amount. Yeah. So yeah, I think again, it's like you're trying to find for stuff like that. I would say researcher again, where if you can find some team that's actually building something super legit, it's probably not going to be at a very high valuation because the market doesn't care that much about Say right now. So
what's the next L1 that comes to mind for you after those three?
Next L1 that comes to mind, the first thing that came to my mind is Aptos. So I guess Aptos.
Really?
Yeah. Probably because I've been seeing a lot of the Aptos April memes where people are like, oh, it's gonna be Aptos April, and they post a chart, and it's like, so probably Aptos.
Speaking of research, I feel like the meme for like the Cosmos eco is like the research happens there, execution happens in other ecosystems, whether it be with like L2s rollups. Do you see any value there in that eco?
Cosmos ecosystem is interesting because for as good of tech that they've been able to bring to the table, they have not been able to bring like good trades to the table for the most part. Some small exceptions. My thing is that I just feel like ETH is a better version of Cosmos now. And like Cosmos may have started the whole wave and like they had the vision first, but it's not about who does it first. It's about who does it best,
Yeah.
So even if ETH rugged their whole roadmap, at the end of the day, ETH has way more money, way more developer mindshare, and then they're just slowly rugging the tech from Cosmos. So for me, like if I were to place my marginal attention, I'd place it on ETH ecosystem rather than on Cosmos.
Cosmos is actually, they're like doing a big Bitcoin pivot as far as I know, or at least Osmosis is, which is like obviously one of the key parts of, or one of the key players. They want to be the point of onboarding for like Bit VM developers or just like people looking to build on top of Bitcoin. Like they want to start having like their native assets being priced in Bitcoin. They want to have, I don't like fully understand the tech, obviously, but they want to be the point of onboarding for like Bitcoin developers. The issue with that is like Cosmos is good at tech. Obviously, they haven't been good at, you know, creating trades historically, and I think that's because they're just terrible at messaging and like, marketing. And like this is like a marketing shift, like a messaging shift. So it's like a pretty big
big change,
gamble,
yeah.
a pretty big change, and like a pretty big gamble on something that like I would like to see. I don't know if I would like bet on necessarily.
Last one, we got to wrap here. Berachain.
Berachain,
They had a big
we like
week
the
this week.
Bera.
Yeah.
They had a good week. Shout out MVP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Berachain. It seems to be somewhat novel, so I think it'll do well.
Cool. All right, that's episode 72. Appreciate you for coming on, man. This was
Appreciate
awesome.
it. Yeah,
Thanks, KEL.
No doubt.
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you.